Hello and welcome to this interview we have with Mr. Peterson here about sustainability. So we're going to ask him a couple of questions. So let's get started. What is your profession / career, and how is it related with sustainability?
So I am a manager of the environmental health and safety in a big factory that makes Mack trucks. It's a 1 million square foot factory. The biggest building you've probably ever been in is like a football stadium. You know, maybe it's that big. Not just the field, the whole stadium, under roof. And they make 100 trucks a day. And so they have lots of environmental issues, and they use a lot of energy. And so my company was really interested because it's owned, Mack Trucks is owned by Volvo, and Volvo is a Swedish company, and they are really interested, especially in Norway and Sweden, to save money and save energy, really green. And they looked at our energy consumption and said, we need to get that lower. We need to do sustainable things. And so we entered into a program with the Department of Energy, DOE, called Better Buildings, and took their advice and went to some seminars, and we changed a lot of things to save money and energy in the plant.
So what inspired you to choose this profession or career?
I think I've always liked to be prudent and save money and save energy, and didn't like to waste things. I don't know what it was, but it's really, I was into environmental stuff in college. I had an undergraduate degree in environmental science, and then a master's degree in environmental management. So the science part was interesting, and you learn about biology and ecology in college, but it's hard to get a job in that. So I got a master's degree in regulations, and so that's what I started out doing, was just working in the regulatory side in factories, how to have permits to discharge water and stuff into the air. And then when you see everything that you discharge, you start wondering, how can we cut down on this? Because you know all that stuff has to be treated or absorbed by the air, and so started getting more into sustainability from that.
Mm-hmm. So what's like your definition of sustainability? Like, how would you describe it?
Well, it would be a series of really actions, I think. You want to reduce emissions, use less energy, have a smaller carbon footprint, reduce waste generation. And do you know what the waste hierarchy is?
No.
A hierarchy is what comes before something else. And so the waste hierarchy is an inverted pyramid, like that. Mm-hmm. And at the top, you want to try to reuse stuff. So you reuse everything. You could reuse, people take staple paper clips off, of a bunch of stuff and throw them away, and you can reuse that, or rubber bands, or all the stuff in the factory that comes in on the parts we buy. We buy millions of parts, like the bumpers, big truck bumpers, and they come in a crate with maybe 20 bumpers, and they have 2x4s between the bumpers. And so we pack all the 2x4s up and send them back to the bumper factory instead of throwing them away. So the bumper factory can use them again. So that's reuse. Beneficial is reuse, using it for the exact same thing. And then the next step down in this triangle, so that's the biggest part of the triangle, it's fatter at the top. The next step down, you don't want to do as much as reuse, is recycling. So you can recycle something into something else. Like you take paper, you know, and they grind it up and turn it into a slurry and make new paper. So that's great because you're recycling the paper into more paper. But what does it use when you make new paper? What does it use to do that?
Energy.
It uses energy. It uses a lot more energy to recycle something than it does to reuse it for the same thing. So then the next thing down, if you can't recycle it to make something out of it, we can take it to a waste to energy factory where they burn all of our trash. We are a zero landfill. And all of our trash from the plant goes to a plant where they grind it up and they burn it. And then they make steam and make electricity. Now, so that's converting it to energy. And, you know, every time you do a change of the like phase, when you change it from hard, you know, you're changing it into heat, and then you change the heat into steam, and then you use the steam to make electricity. So there's three changes there. Every time you go through a change, you lose some of the energy. You know, it's inefficient. And so you only get, you know, if you reuse, you're using 100% of the thing back. If you recycle, you may be using, you know, 80%. If you go waste to energy, maybe you're using only 50% of the original energy. And then the last thing we do would be to dispose of it in a landfill. So it's a triangle like that. So that's how we plan our strategies.
So what materials do you consider to be sustainable, and what materials do you not consider to be sustainable?
And what would be better to recycle?
Yeah.
Okay. So just in recycling, we've seen commingled recycling, like the box that you take out to the corner every week has got paper, plastic, and glass, and metal in it, right? It's got all that stuff in there. So what would be, like, if you just take the paper and the plastic. So paper, so I guess you want, the way you decide what's sustainable is what you can get the most energy back from in recycling. And plastic, you can melt it down and you get new plastic. You can form it right away into new plastic. You just melt it, turns to liquid plastic, you form it into blocks, you sell it as blocks, and then they make other stuff out of it. You gotta be careful with the colors. Steel, same thing. Melt it down, form it into blocks. All the metals are easy to recycle and lots more sustainable. One thing that surprisingly enough is not easy to recycle is glass. Because glass is what? Sand. And you have to melt that glass, you have to put so much energy into melting the glass, and then you don't get nice glass. You have to add a lot more additives to it before you get nice glass back. For instance. So that would be sustainable. Let me think about good sustainable products.
Yes.
Like, which resources do you often use to keep your products like sustainable? So like how to keep like sustainable like energy? What resources do you like usually use?
Not sure. What does it say? When you receive,
Like do you use it? Like do you use
example.
geothermal, biomass?
Okay, sustainable, there's two things, two good ones. I see what you mean. We don't use those two things. But what we did do three things we can point to. In our Better Buildings program, we've got a huge energy savings. We reduced our energy use by 40% since 2009. It's a huge amount of energy in megawatts. And there's three main ways we did it. Number one is we had the way we heat the plant. We used to have 3 giant boilers, and we burn gas and boil water into steam and send that steam through miles of piping. I think 4 or 5 miles of piping in the plant, and it would go into boxes in the ceiling with a radiator in it, and the hot would go through the radiator, and there'd be a big fan on the other side blowing the hot air into the plant. Okay, and that's how we heated the plant. Well, there's, again, changes there, phase changes. 2 of them. You gotta boil the water with the gas, and you gotta send the gas through all this piping, and the piping gets hot, and it doesn't heat the plant, and then you go through a radiator, and the heat exchange in the radiator is the wind blowing across it, so you don't get all the heat out of it. And so, we went to direct fire gas heaters. Up in the ceiling, like radiant heaters. Have you seen those? Where the gas comes in and burns in a catalytic bed, and the heat comes right down. There's no changes of energy. You don't have to boil water and then pump it with an electric pump through miles of piping and then have a radiator blowing air on it. So it's much more efficient. That's the boiler project. The next project was the skylights. We have 700 skylights in the plant we put in. You ever see a Walmart? Same thing. The roof of a Walmart, nothing but skylights all over the whole plant. And so then the third thing was these really high efficient fluorescent lamps. And they're tiny in diameter. They're just like that. The newest ones, I think they're called T8s. And they have the smallest amount of mercury in them. All fluorescent lamps have mercury. And so they burn really intense. You get a lot of lumens out of the electricity that you use. But the neat thing is they have 2 sensors on them. One sensor looks up and one sensor looks down. The one that's down is an occupancy sensor. For a period of 10 minutes, it turns the light off. Figure there's nobody there. And it also looks up, because during the day, if there's enough light coming through the skylight, it turns the light off. So you can still be motion. So the light sensor overrides the motion sensor. So those 3 projects linked together have saved a lot of money, and those are really sustainable projects.
Okay.
Do you receive competition in your company against for the sustainability of your products?
So is there like competition between like you and like other
Any,
companies?
any other companies?
Yeah.
No, we have just a friendly competition between the Volvo factories around the world. I think they have about 60 different factories. And, yeah, we have, we rate ourselves exactly how we're doing against all the other factories. So that's definitely competitive, because we all want to, receive awards. There's a sustainability award that we can get for the biggest advances we've made. Yeah, that's a good one.
Right. And then how do you make like those products or the factory? How do you make it more like sustainable than like
What you
the
have
rest of the
already.
competition?
Yeah.
The rest of the competition.
Yeah.
Almost everybody has done what we've done so far. A lot of them have got the lights and the skylights and the new fluorescent lights, because they're getting pretty common. You ever see in a gymnasium they have those big halogen lights, those round ones?
Yeah.
Those are way inefficient. They use probably 5 times the amount of electricity than those new fluorescent lights. In fact, you can get grants from electrical companies to change your lights. They'll help you pay for changing the lights because you use a lot of electricity. And of course, that means they don't have to build such a big power plant. But I got off track. What was the question?
How do you make your products like more sustainable in the competition?
Okay, so our next, so we survey the plant to figure out where the energy use is. And the way you do that is you put electrical meters that clamp onto the wires. They're not permanently installed, and they read the voltage going through. So you can look at all your machines and figure out what are the biggest users of electricity. Okay? And in a factory like that, we have a lot of compressed air, because you have air ratchet guns, you know, that undo bolts and tighten bolts, lots of those. And we have air-driven electric cranes, where you push a button instead of electric, it's an air-powered crane. And that is now our biggest energy user. It's not it's the compressors, it's the electric motors that compress the air. Because those things are running all the time, and you know, we have to fill up truck tires with air, all that stuff. And so our goal is to move away from compressed air whenever we get a chance. So that's one way we think we're going to, you know, beat some of our competitor plants. And another thing about air is it leaks. You know, I mean, there's miles of piping up there, and they go, little air leak is, you know, can cost lots of money, like a little water leak, but more, because compressed air is a very expensive way to drive an electric drill or something like that, compared to just using an electric motor. Because why? The same thing, that phase change. You're taking an electric motor, right, and you're compressing air, which builds up heat, so you're losing that heat, is lost energy, and you're going through a long air line, and you're going out to what? An air-driven drill. So throw that all away and just use an electric drill to begin with. And that's what we're doing, more and more of.
What do you think is the relationship between making your product sustainable and making energy sustainable?
I think, well, there's a direct relationship. The product, you see, I don't have anything to do with building the product. You know, they design the truck, and they design stuff into the truck that, in a factory, there's 2 groups of people. There's a group of people that runs the factory itself, and the walls and the energy and all that, and the environmental regulation. And then there's a group of people who builds the truck, and that's all they care about, building the truck. So there's the product production side and the facility side. So I'm on the facility side of the truck, so I don't get into designing the truck to be sustainable.
Then what do you think like the relationship is between like recycling, sort of like reusing, and the natural energy resources? Like what's the relationship between those two then?
there's certainly direct relationship going back to like the example of the 2x4s, reusing a resource rather than even recycling it. So that hierarchy is very important in to answer that question, I think.
So what do you think is the most sustainable resource right now
For
for
natural
natural
energy.
It probably would be wind power or solar power, because they both, especially I have to say solar power, would be the most sustainable. It takes energy to put the solar panels together, and it takes resources and I think some very expensive resources to put. I don't know exactly what's in a solar panel, but probably some. Do you?
Yeah,
Well, I
expert
did
here.
Yeah.
The solar panel phase.
so basically most of it is when it's treated, it's mostly silicon.
Mhm.
There is the two big types are mono and poly.
Uh-huh.
Mono is more, it obviously costs more, but it's good because it takes the least amount of space.
Oh yeah.
And also, although it's the most expensive, it is really good with efficiency rates and
Mhm.
lasts the longest. It lasts
And
about
lasts
25 years.
Huh.
So as long as the only one cut down about solar power is obviously you can't have it at night at
Yeah.
one point, and also with them is sometimes they can be iffy on cloudy days and all that, and also usually it takes
Yeah.
a large amount of space. Like if you even
Oh,
look
yeah.
up like solar power panel like fields, there's some of them TFC, which is another type.
Yeah.
They take up so much space. They can take up acres and acres
Uh-huh.
and acres. But there's definitely there is I forget, it's already like I think 17,000 megawatts coming from the sun constantly.
Mhm. Right.
So if you can absorb that, the more and more we can get,
Mhm.
that is definitely a good source of that. Of
So the second
energy.
below that will be wind power. And what I don't like about wind power is you're paying, something's happening. You're taking that energy out of the wind. And you think, well, the wind is free, but for millions of years, the wind blew like this in this area. Now, if you put these windmills up there, they're going to slow that wind down. Because that energy that's spinning them is coming from that wind, and it's going to slow that wind down, and there's going to be something's going to happen because of that. The birds, there's going to be something that happens. It's going to change something. You can't get it for free.
The environment.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, it's going to change the environment somehow. And the same thing goes, they have talk about tidal power, where they can use the currents, and they can put a propeller underwater. It's spun by the
The turbine.
by the turret. And what happens is, well, that means you just slow that water down a little bit. Something's whereas it seems like solar doesn't have that effect.
Yeah. And the sun will be here for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but of course you got the cloudy days and the nights.
Yeah.
So we need to have battery. That's the biggest
Yes,
innovation
yeah,
that needs to happen.
yeah,
Better
some-
battery performance.
Yeah, that is true. Like, most do store it, and even there's some systems there where, when the heat hits it, actually goes to a boiler and causes that to boil, like you said, with the multiple
Right.
systems
Mhm.
and some place that. The one good thing about solar though is that it's become much more residential and open to people who wanna, not like
Yeah, that's
some of
true.
the other ones, like, you really have to
You
be
can't build a
a
dam in
company.
your backyard.
Right.
Backyard,
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you can't have a nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was actually the plan.
Yeah.
Yes, when they first made it like nuclear reactors.
Right.
The plan was for everyone to have one.
Yeah, and I've over my life I've been really disappointed that nuclear energy hasn't taken off, and it's mostly because of the small amount of waste. Because you see those big clouds going up from the nuclear plant, but all it is steam
Yeah.
or
It
water.
requires a lot amount of water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that does use water. Okay.
So what do you see in the future of sustainability and natural
And
energy?
natural energy.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I definitely see a strong move toward it. Because these ridiculously low gas prices due to the world political situation is certainly not going to last. And I'm really angry about that because when gas was $4 a gallon, which is where it should be $5 a gallon. I think they should tax the heck out of gas to make people drive less. I have a Prius, and when you have a Prius, you get immediate feedback on the dashboard. Have you ever been in one? It tells you exactly how much energy you're moving, and you can just tickle your foot down a little bit to go faster, and you can see the energy use jump up. And when you go up a hill, it jumps up. And so you get that immediate feedback, and it makes you drive more sustainably. And when gas was, the problem is that some people don't like Priuses, and as soon as they see them, they think that's a wimpy car, and they actually tailgate because you're not going fast enough. And so when gas was $4 a gallon, I would see big V8 pickup trucks stay behind me 100 feet and pace me, figuring, well, if the Prius is going, maybe I should go that fast too. Now that it's $2 a gallon, they go up and flash around me with the engine just spewing exhaust. So the future is, and more of that. I think, I definitely think it's going to be more regulation to force people into using more sustainable efforts. I don't think they're going to do it voluntarily.
Yeah.
So do you think at some point like oil and coal power and stuff is going to be obsolete?
Coal is certainly going to be, unless they can figure out someday how to get coal to go through a pipe, which they can. If they can get the energy out of coal and like gasify it or something like that. But I think battery life is the most important thing that's going to happen. Better battery life. And don't they have one that goes in your garage, on the wall in the garage? They just tell
Yeah.
Yes.
where
Employment.
you can run your solar panels, and then you charge this giant battery that goes up on the wall, and it runs the house at night.
Yeah. And then you can also like charge your car off of it.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah.
Electric cars.
The interesting is actually BMW made it's kind of a fusion because it's a luxury sports car with electric because I love it. I would always want it. So actually one of my dream cars, it's called a BMW I, and basically it gets 150 mpge as electric. So you can charge that thing overnight. You can go so far, but you're not using fossil fuels. But yet again, a lot of companies don't, like our teacher was using, when they make cars like that run off things like air and that, they're like, no, we want you to buy our gas, we want to make more money. So now it's more like, but the thing is, it's good to advance because at one point, what if we don't have the technology and it's just ran out? That
Yeah.
wouldn't be good either.
Because fossil fuels are eventually going to run out.
Yeah, that's the
Mhm.
reality.
Well, electric cars have to be powered by the power plant.
Yeah.
It's still burning fossil fuels, unless it was an atomic power plant.
Yeah.
I mean, they look at atomic submarines and ships. Those don't have giant reactors that power cities. They have enough to power maybe a big apartment building. And they've been running nuclear power plants in ships for 30 years. Probably more than that. The first atomic ship was probably in the 60s. And so if they could run small packaged nuclear plants like that, why can't they make them safer, smaller, more efficient? Because that gives you electricity without polluting.
Yeah.
mean, if something were to happen, you know, with like that energy though, it would be pretty
Yes.
catastrophic.
Yeah.
Well, the smaller ones wouldn't be so bad, but then
Yeah.
there'd be a lot more of them.
Yeah.
Well, I am working on the annual sustainability report that we have to report to Sweden, all of our energy use. And we have to report the, the hardest thing in engineering calculations is figuring out the CO2 that you use. Because you have to use all the diesel fuel that we burn, all the natural gas we burn, and then you have to apply factors to get at the amount of CO2 that comes out of all that energy. And you have to talk to the power plants, the regional energy supplier like PECO, and find out what their factor is. And you take all the electricity that you burn and you apply that factor to find out how much CO2 they put out. And every company has a different factor based on the mix of whether they burn coal or gas or nuclear or hydro.
So those are all the questions we have. Thank
Uh-huh.
you for taking your time to
You're welcome.
interview us, or
Yeah.
to have us interview you.
Good.
So,
I went to a plant, it was another Swedish plant, and interviewed about 10 years ago. And the job was sustainability manager. And I sat down, they said, would you like some water? And so they brought the water to me in a real glass, okay, with ice and water rather than a plastic bottle. You know, much better. Okay, I think we're done.
yep.
Alright.
Good time.
Wow, our time was
Wow, wasn't it?